Republican Congressman Andy Biggs asked why the rush now on Fox's America's Newsroom.
If impeachment is the right remedy, doing it 6 months before an election is just as important as doing it now and trying to cram it in.
Michigan Democrat Congressman Dan Kildee told Fox's America's Newsroom he's not 100% yes yet on impeachment and notes this is as serious as it gets for members of Congress.
I don't think anybody should be celebrating this moment. We all may come to different conclusions about whether or not the information that we receive leads us to impeachment.
The Minnesota National Guard's looking for the cause of Thursday's Black Hawk helicopter crash that killed the 3 Guard members on board. Robbery suspects in a hijacked UPS truck led police in South Florida on a high-speed chase that ended in a fatal shootout. The FBI's George Pyro says the incident started with a jewelry store robbery.
The Regency jewelry store in Coral Gables was robbed by 2 armed individuals. As the individuals were fleeing, shots were fired.
The chase ended in Miramar, north of Miami. Those killed were the UPS driver, a person in a nearby car, and the 2 suspects. Uber releases a report on sexual assaults in the U.S., which says nearly 6,000 people reported assaults to Uber in 2017 and 2018. Meantime, 19 women have sued rival Lyft, claiming the drivers assaulted them. And California bans insurance companies from dropping homeowners in wildlife areas for at least 1 year. America's listening to Fox News.
Did you know that home loan rates have plunged again? Would you like to take advantage of these lower rates to help lower your monthly payments? Refinancing doesn't have to be for another 30 years. It can be for 10, 15, or 20 years. It's up to you. Reduce your monthly payments. Pay off your loan earlier. At Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Credit conditions apply.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Calaguan Hapa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
Federal agents arrest nearly 4 dozen people they say were members of one of the largest criminal organizations in the world.
Dozens of members of the Latin Kings gang from the Boston area and the eastern U.S. face drug, gun, and racketeering charges. A number of search warrants are also being executed. The arrests are the result of a 5-year investigation. U.S. Attorney Andrew Lelling says so far they've seized weapons and other assets,
including an MP5 submachine gun, an AR-15, and a MAC-10. 6 cars, 6 motorcycles, 3 jet skis, and an ATV.
Drugs and cash were also found. Arrests of Latin Kings leaders were also carried out in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New Jersey. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Police in India say they shot and killed 4 men accused of raping and killing a woman. A police official says the men were trying to escape during a visit to the crime scene. The high-profile case sparked protest across India. France comes to a grinding halt as a massive strike gets underway.
French rail workers, air traffic controllers, teachers, firemen, policemen, and other public sector staff staged walkouts and took to the streets, angry at proposed changes to the generous pension system. 70% of schools are closed, 90% of high-speed trains cancelled. Even the Eiffel Tower has been shut. The strikes are open-ended, and police say they are now concerned that radical anti-capitalist elements could infiltrate the protests, leading to more violence over the coming weeks. In London, Benjamin Hall, Fox News.
And a scary moment more than 1,000 feet over downtown Los Angeles as a drone slammed into a news helicopter. The pilot making an emergency landing without any injuries. The drone was 700 feet above its legal altitude. Police are looking for the drone owner. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Are you ready for some football? The Ray Gibson Show has got your fix every day with the Points NFL Pick'em Contest. Get the latest updates as we check out the past week's performance and break down the upcoming action. Get your game on by calling the hotline at 888-TALK or sound off on Facebook Live at thepoint.gu. League members get a chance to win some awesome weekly prizes with a shot for your choice of a new GTA phone. The NFL Pick'em Contest is brought to you by Current Guam with special thanks to GTA. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Does that apply on Saturday and Sunday too, Real Joe Cruz?
Every day that ends in Y, sir.
Every day that ends in Y. Okay, so I won't be here warbling on the airwaves tomorrow, reciting the sacred words of the Second Amendment. But even though I'm not here, it's kind of like the old one about if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, is the man, no, that's about the man and his wife, right? Is there still sound? If a man makes a statement in the woods and his wife isn't there to hear him, is he still wrong? So if it's Saturday and there's no one on Tall Tales to read the Second Amendment into the record, do people still have a right to keep and bear arms? You better Hong Kong believe it. 24/7, Second Amendment, every day. That's how we start the program here on Tall Tales. From the Second Amendment, we usually go straight to that portion of the program that causes the Real Joe Cruz to key up the theme music from Meet the Press. It's called Zemi E. Courtney. Zemi E. Courtney. Zemi E. Courtney, press the meat. We turn it around, it means meet the press. So it's my feeble attempt at giving a little bit of reinforcement to the poet laureate of Tall Tales, Andrew. It's my backwards bilingual play on words. Thank you, Real Joe Cruz. What's that strange noise?
I have no idea. Must be a phone in there somewhere.
Wow. Oh, I know what it is. It's this one. Yeah, I'm just going to hang up on it. Sorry, folks. Yeah, if you have an overpowering desire to call Tall Tales, 888-TALK, 888-8255. And if you call that number, no one other than the Real Joe Cruz will answer your call. Which probably for most of the callers is the high point of the call. The Real Joe Cruz will chat you up a little bit. He'll get your name, rank, and service number. He'll put a little note here on my Stack VIP, and then I will know who you are. I will push a button, greet you, and you will be broadcast as though you were a radio talk show host. You will be broadcasting your voice to our entire international radio listening audience. So don't try this other number, because all that's going to happen is I'm going to hang up on you. Okay, so it looks like we're starting out the day here with a call before I even get to Zemi Ikotny, Real Joe Cruz.
Yes, sir.
And the caller is Adrian. All right. Well, Adrian, you get the early bird prize today. You're on the line before I have even jumped into Zemi Ikotny. So what can you tell me, Adrian?
Well, I'm just leaving the Country Club of the Pacific, and I just, turned on. Of course, you're on. Love listening to you. Been on the island now for about 4 or 5 months, and just absolutely find you and Mr. Ray Gibson in the morning quite fascinating. I love that you read the Second Amendment every time, but I have to say I'm partial in part to to our founding fathers that found that the amendments to the Constitution were irrelevant. Because I'll tell you what, if at any point in time someone thinks that they are pervious to come into my home unannounced with harmful intent, I do not need any piece of paper, regardless of its origins, to tell me that I can defend myself. So I just wondered what your thoughts on that were. Love listening to you. I'll go ahead and jump off, and you can go ahead and pass that over the air. Thank you. God bless.
Well, Adrian, you seem to have your head screwed on right here. If you're a fan of Ray Gibson and Tall Tales, obviously you are sourcing a very important source of knowledge here on the island. So your question is, Second Amendment or no Second Amendment, if someone comes to my house intent on doing me harm, I don't need to get out my inscribed or my annotated copy of the United States Constitution to know that I could grab a firearm and defend myself against that intruder. I think that's the way what your question was, Adrian. And you're right. And, so much of what we look at as our rights under the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, are rights that actually have their source long before the Constitution was ever promulgated. What we on the right refer to as natural law. Natural law is, sort of like the law of nature as we understand it, which has always been there, will always be there, and is generally immutable. So we are human beings. We are sentient beings. We are able to think, to remember, to imagine, to plan, and do all of the things that come with sentience. And as part of our nature, our hardwiring, we are hardwired to do 2 things. 1, self-defense. 2, propagation of the race. In other words, recreation. Yeah, that's the part you like, really, Real Joe Cruz, right? Propagation of the race, yeah. Self-defense, okay, right? Yeah. So self-defense, then, is one of those natural rights that is memorialized in the Constitution. But those of us who believe in, the natural rights theory that the government doesn't give you your rights are there. They're natural rights. You could ascribe them to God-given rights, which our Declaration of Independence does. But you don't need to have a government agency saying, well, we've had several public hearings. We've done draft rules. We've had a battery of Philadelphia lawyers look through this. And we are going to give you the right to defend yourself in your own home. That just isn't the way it works. So you're absolutely right, Adrian, and I'm glad you called in to share that. You got the program off to a really good start today, talking about our Constitution, our rights, the negative rights provided by the Constitution. What the Second Amendment says, basically, it doesn't tell you what you can do. It tells you what the government can't do, which is kind of the design of all of the Bill of Rights. If you look at the first word in the Bill of Rights, I happen to have it right in front of me here. My beat-up copy of the Constitution. I never leave home without it. And the first word of the First Amendment is Congress. And it goes like this: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, etc. So the Bill of Rights don't tell you what you can do or what you must do. it tells the government what it can't do. So it's a series of negative rights, a protection of your individual rights. So, boy, I'll tell you, my cup runneth over. You've opened the Tom line right away, right?
Sir, yes, sir.
Yeah, we've opened the Tom line. We've got Tom Poole. Good morning, or good afternoon, Tom.
Yeah, good afternoon, Judge, and welcome back. I need a cough button, too. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Judge, today's my anniversary. I have had this horrible cough for 5 weeks. I'm not sure if I'm ahead of you or not. Do you know what's causing yours? I've been to the hospital twice, and they said, we can't find anything wrong. Get out. We've got real people to take care of.
Yeah.
And I've just had this horrible cough for 5 full weeks.
Well, I don't know what causes it. I can tell you this about that cough button thing, though. They don't work.
Just keep coughing anyway.
Yeah, they had one over at the other station where I worked, and I pressed it, and I still had to cough, so it doesn't work.
Well, I'm sorry. That wasn't really what I called about. I just had a coughing fit whenever you answered the phone. I wanted to know, and I think I've heard you address this before, and you were talking about it yesterday, and that is privacy. Does the Constitution address privacy?
Nope.
That's what I thought I remembered you saying.
Yes.
Okay.
You could do a complete, you could use your search feature on Microsoft Word, and you will not find the word privacy anywhere in the Constitution.
Okay. All right. That's what I thought. And I think that's an important thing to remember when everybody starts telling us what they can and can't do on the basis of privacy, and that I just don't know where that basis is.
Especially the misspeaker at the National Guard, the one who, whenever we need a comment from the National Guard, she will misspeak.
Okay. Judge, thanks very much. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, well, Tom, a little encouragement on your cough. I think it's getting better. Of course, you have been practicing a lot, so...
I have.
Okay, thanks for calling.
Thanks, Judge. Good afternoon.
Okay, thanks, Doc. Now, there's real dedication. There's a guy who, is parsing his sentences so that he can squeeze them in between coughs. But he still wants to call tall tales and ask for clarification on the word privacy. What he was referring to is yesterday I read a quote from the National Guard spokesman who said, "We're not releasing the name of the person who wrote the anonymous letter." And that makes a lot of sense. Then he wouldn't be anonymous anymore. But she had a good reason. We're not releasing that, we're not confirming that name because of privacy. Well, she might as well have said, we're not releasing that name because of buoyancy, right? Or frivolity, or any other word that ends in CY. Didn't make any sense at all, but I guess it caught Tom's ear. And in answer to Tom's question, the word privacy appears nowhere in the United States Constitution or its amendments. However, the eagle eyes on the left at the United States Supreme Court found that word in a case called Griswold versus Connecticut, which started the whole sexual revolution as far as American jurisprudence is concerned. They found that word nestled in the penumbra of the Bill of Rights. In other words, in the shadows of the Bill of Rights. So the word privacy does not appear anywhere in the Constitution. And Josephine Bloss, spokesman for the National Guard, just to repeat something else that's not in the Constitution, Josephine Bloss, spokesman for the National Guard, said that they had to keep the sex offender, they were going to keep the sex offender on the payroll because he's innocent until proven guilty. And she said it's in our Constitution. Well, you won't find the word innocent in our Constitution. You won't find the word guilty in our Constitution. And you won't find the word innocence anywhere in criminal trial law. If you go to trial in a criminal case and you get off, the jury doesn't come back and say, he's innocent. The jury comes back and says, not guilty. Big difference. Okay, so let's see. I've got another. Well, you did open up the Tom line, huh? All right. So Our Tom, how you doing today, Tom?
How you doing, sir?
Good.
He opened up a timeline, right?
Yeah.
But instead of the word privacy, the Constitution used the word secure, right?
Let me see.
Citizens have the right to be secure in their persons and papers, etc., etc.
Fourth Amendment, Tom, you're absolutely right. So it's always a pleasure to run into another constitutional scholar. The Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. You're right, Tom.
Okay. But I got another question that's been bugging me for a long time, and I need your input on it. And here's the question. How far is the freedom of speech can be taken? Like, our president had been called a traitor, had been called a Russian spy. Does freedom of speech cover that?
Okay, the question is, how far does our freedom of speech reach? Well, here's one limit on our freedom of speech. No person in our international radio listening audience is permitted to say anything derogatory about Tall Tales, its callers, and most especially about its host.
I agree.
That is not in the First Amendment, but it probably should be in the First Amendment, right, Tom?
Yeah.
But as far as criticizing public officials, that is the essence of the First Amendment. That's why it's so important. People who say things that are agreeable and popular, etc., don't need the protection of the Constitution. It's those who go out and criticize government officials, the government, the president, etc. That's where the First Amendment really comes in handy. So you could call the President of the United States a dirty skunk and an honorary pig stealer, and you could do it in the New York Times. Of course, you got to be quick if it's the New York Times, because they'll probably beat you to it with their editorial policy. But criticizing the president is perfectly okay under the First Amendment, Tom.
But where does the word slander come in there? Because he's been called a traitor, but he's not a traitor.
Well, let me answer that. Slander means oral statement. Yeah, oral statement, not written statements. Oral statements that bring a person into disrepute by saying that he's dishonest, a criminal, has a sexual disease, a few things like that, right? That's what slander is. But when you're talking about a public official like the President of the United States, the standard for slander is very, very high. But before I get to that, let me say this. The right of freedom of speech under the First Amendment is not absolute. And remember, it is another one of those negative rights. It tells you what the government can't do. The government can't squelch your freedom of speech. Now, when A sues B for libel, the only way the government comes in there is by providing the courthouse where the suit is brought. So the fact that we have a First Amendment on the books doesn't prevent people from suing for defamation. So if A defames B, the First Amendment's not going to be much protection for him. As far as suing a public official, in a case called New York Times versus Sullivan, the Supreme Court said if you're going to sue a public official, the standard is very high. You must be able to show, or the public official must be able to show that what you said was deliberately false. It was a lie and you knew it was a lie, or else it was made so recklessly in disregard of the truth that it's punishable. So it's, as a matter of law, it's really hard to recover on a libel suit against any public official, certainly the President of the United States. So libel and slander are remedies basically available to private citizens outside of the First Amendment. They aren't even exceptions to the First Amendment, because remember, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting, as you were, abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. So it started out addressing only Congress. In the 1920s, the Supreme Court started saying, well, you know, when we enacted the 14th Amendment, what we meant to do was incorporate some of those parts of the Bill of Rights and apply them to the states. So that's why the word Congress now means, basically, it means the government. No element of government shall abridge the freedom of speech or of the press. Make sense, Tom?
Yes, it does. It still doesn't, in my mind, that person calling the president a traitor, that person that's calling the president a traitor knows that it's a lie, but he deliberately called the president in public as that traitor. So the perpetrator of that lie should be held liable, don't you think?
Well,
he knows it's a lie. He knows the president is not a traitor, but he did call the president a traitor in public.
Now, refresh my recollection. Was it Pencil Neck that called him a traitor?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of thing Pencil Neck does. Well, and there's a practical dimension too, Tom, and that is that as far as high government officials, the general rule of sticks and stones applies. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And some of the theory is that when a high official like the president makes too much of an insult, he only adds to the gravity of the insult, and perhaps it's better to let it go, knowing that the public will often consider the source and downgrade the statement on that basis.
Yeah, it just bothers me that Pencil Neck would tell that lie so many times that then people will start thinking that maybe it's true.
Well,
he will start to brainwash people to think that maybe it's true because he's told it so many times.
I guess I would lapse into a Latin maxim there, Tom. Sic semper pencil neckus. Thus always with Pencil Neck. But anyhow, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did.
I'm glad to see that we got the Tom line properly functioning now. Thanks for calling, Tom.
All right, thank you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
And let's see, I've got Jiminy Crickets on the line. Wow, I only have one thing to say about that. Jiminy Crickets.
Hey, speaking of which...
Jiminy Cricket sounds an awful lot like Jimmy. Hi, Jimmy.
Yeah, call me anything you want, as long as you call me for dinner.
All right, will do, Jimmy.
But speaking of which, the First and Second Amendment.
Uh-huh.
Do you know why they have the Second Amendment?
Why we have the Second Amendment?
Yeah.
Well, I could probably talk for a whole 2 hours about why we have it, but I'd like to hear what you have to say, Jimmy.
To protect the First Amendment.
I've heard that. The reason that if we didn't have the Second Amendment...
That's not original. That's not original. I heard it on the radio.
That's something that Jim Miles used to say all the time. I think you old-timers remember Jim Miles. If it weren't for the Second Amendment, there would be no First Amendment freedoms. Yeah.
Anyway, that's...
So thanks a lot for that clarification, Jimmy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It wasn't original.
Well, it's okay.
But it's still true.
Well, those who support the Second Amendment, you know, there are a couple of theories. One theory was, you know, that everybody should have a musket hanging over his fireplace, so when there's a threat from hostile Indians or the British or the French or something like that, you grab your musket and go fall in at the village square and become a part of the militia. Another theory is the colonists learned so many hard lessons from George III that they thought that it was very necessary to have a protection against a government that turned tyrannical. And the way to do that would be to have an armed citizenry so that if the government got out of control, the citizens could take their country back.
But the fact is, George III was mentally deficient.
Well, that didn't stop him from being the king, did it?
No, but it stopped him from keeping America like Canada. Or it stopped his generals.
Yeah, well, maybe it was a blessing that he was not as sharp, the sharpest tack in the box, right, Jimmy?
Well, I don't know. At least America didn't get colonized.
Well, actually, you know, we started out with 13 colonies, but that was back in the days when a child would not get his mouth washed out with soap for saying that another child was a colonial. Colony has become almost as bad a word as the N-word nowadays. You are a colonizer. Whoa, get out of here. You're a colonizer.
And, you know, I agree. You know, they got a group thing not to buy white eggs anymore.
A group thing, what?
They won't buy any white eggs.
They won't buy white eggs?
Yeah, those eggs have been colonized.
Yeah, well, I thought that perhaps they preferred white eggs because they could crack them.
Yeah, you got to crack her sometime.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, Jimmy, it's always a pleasure to chat with you, so thanks a lot for calling Tall Tales.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't have anything reasonable.
Okay, talk to you later. Okay, so short break here. Coming back, 888-8255. Get on the air here on Tall Tales. If not, I'm going to jump right into Jimmy Cudney.
Knowing that we have choices in medical providers locally and outside of Guam is important and reassuring. This is the reason why Calvo Select Care provides quality health care options to its members. From a wide array of local, primary, and specialty doctors and clinics to a comprehensive hospital network on island and outside of Guam, you can trust Calvo Select Care to be there for you. Federal employees and annuitants enroll today. Call 477-9808 for more information.
Hey, what's that?
A Subway Big Hot Pastrami?
My big hot pastrami?
No, my Subway Big Hot Pastrami. Get your own.
Get your own Subway Big Hot Pastrami. Tender, juicy beef on freshly baked sunflower crunch bread, topped with pickles and mustard. Finish off your meal with all new seasoned potato wedges, baked to perfection right in the restaurant. Both available for a limited time only. Subway, make it what you want.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So we got the program off to a good start here. The Real Joe Cruz finally opened up the Tom line, and I had two Toms on the line, and I've got Tom Van Engen on Facebook who comes up and says, "Glad your cough is getting better." Finally. Well, thank you, Tom Van Engen. I appreciate that. It's been a long struggle. And for a while, I thought maybe I was going to have to change the name, change that name on the bottom of the screen from Bob Klitzkie to Bob Klitzkie's Cough, because the cough seemed to be using most of the airtime. But anyhow, it looks like the story's going to have a happy ending. So now we plunge into let's play the theme one more time, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah, it's the local equivalent of Meet the Press, where I evaluate the editorials of our two daily newspapers, check them for errors in usage, grammar, facts, theory, whatever, and give the better of the two the coveted blue star with my big fat blue pencil here. Oftentimes, in fact, most of the time, there's very little weighing to do because the Daily News doesn't write editorials. They copy editorials from the USA Today editorial board. And today is no exception. Here's the Daily News. This is what the Daily News put on their local editorial page. Our view, taking it a step too far. President Trump toys with NATO principles. So if you want to find out how President Trump toyed with NATO principles, you don't need to pony up a buck for the Daily News. You can go online and find that. It won't cost you anything at all. And then we have the Post, which day in, day out writes pretty workmanlike editorials, edgy, hard-hitting, incisive, so that when you're finished, you're saying, yeah, right on, Guam Daily Post, or, man, Daily Post, you really missed the boat this time. You're wrong. Or, you know, I didn't know that, but I'm glad the Post got me thinking about that. That's what editorials are for, not to run copy from a mainland newspaper that has almost zero connection with Guam. So here's the Post editorial for today. Change in food stamp rule could mean many households will go hungry. Now, you'll see why I say this, but if I had written the headline, and of course we know that the person who writes the editorial isn't the one who writes the headline. The copywriter writes the headlines, and the headline for a story is a function of two things: what the story's about and the size of the news hole that the story is going to go in. So it's a kind of a mathematical calculation. But had I been the one writing this headline, I would have made it read like this: change in food stamp rule could mean many households will go to work. Work is a good word. Hungry is a bad word. So when you see a headline that says, households will go hungry, this is meant to kind of tug at your heartstrings and appeal to that part of the readership that reads, that writes with its left hand and thinks with its brain. So here's what the editorial says. We've heard since February this year that the Trump administration wants to limit Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program benefits, commonly called food stamps, for able-bodied adults who don't have minor children and don't have disabilities. What are they thinking of? Able-bodied adults without children or disabilities? No food stamps? My goodness, how draconian can you get? Okay, I'm just getting into the editorial here, so I'm going to stop for a second here. Today is a good day for calls. I've got a caller on the line here who ordinarily calls in and makes his mark. Right, Mark?
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I'm listening to your discussion about the editorial about the SNAP program.
Yeah.
That was that was implemented years ago. At one time.
The program was, yeah.
Yeah, I think they came up. The name of the program back then was CWEP.
Yeah, you're right.
So this one here is just another. I'm looking at another way of implementing able-bodied people to go to work.
Well, it's giving them an incentive to go to work because as the food stamp program was initially conceived, there wasn't a work dimension to it. You know, you showed that you were needy and you would get your food stamps.
Yeah, and it was basically for families.
Yeah.
So if you got individuals out there that for some reason or another they're able-bodied but they just don't want to work because they want the free money, you know, I like this program because that means that they're going to have to get off their butts and go out and find a job.
I think that's what it means, Mark.
Yeah, and also to get back to a conversation I was listening to earlier.
Yeah.
About reference to pencil neck.
Uh-huh.
I'm waiting for my shirt. I ordered it, and it's hilarious that it came from. I heard Trump refer to it, but it wasn't really in a spot where someone would catch on to it.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody apparently did because I've got my bullshit shirt coming.
Good.
And that's it's not what do you call that obscene, but it's a reference to that phrase, what is legal to say.
Okay.
And that's the way everything is going right now. And then you made reference about how he treated the leaders of NATO.
Uh-huh.
He basically went in there, told them what needed to be done to not to satisfy, but to meet the expectations from the U.S. And a lot of the countries were glad to hear it that way, because a lot of the bigger countries were not meeting their expectations. So when he came in, I mean, even Canada was saying they're supposed to stick in 3 or 4%, and right now they said they've been trying to, and Trump was actually calling Trudeau out by saying, how much do you have there? And Trudeau's trying to come up with a number that would make that, won't make them look bad by saying, oh, we did this, we're at 1.7% or something like that. It was hilarious to watch. But I like that we have a president now that actually is calling everybody out, and he's not your atypical politician. But he does have, and people might say I'm crazy to say this, but he does have the country's best interest at heart.
I agree, Mark.
Well, you have a good weekend, my friend.
Well, thank you very much for calling, Mark. And, on the subject of T-shirts, I haven't seen a pencil neck T-shirt yet, although that would certainly be marketable. I have an old T-shirt at home that would kind of be relevant to the Democrats in the impeachment hearing that I ought to wear for the show sometime. But some of the younger viewers and listeners might not remember Beavis and Butthead.
I do.
Yeah, so that's kind of what the impeachment hearings look like, Beavis and Butthead. As far as NATO is concerned, Patrick Buchanan, who ran for president at one time, a good conservative columnist, said that when the Soviet Union fell apart, we should have disbanded NATO, declared victory, and brought the troops home. And I think maybe he had a good point. The presence of NATO in Europe right now, with the way we want to push it right up cheek by jowl with the Russians, is as much provocative as it is defense. And obviously it costs us a lot of money. But anyhow, that could be a pretty good topic for another program. Let me get back into the Post editorial today for now. Okay, we've heard since February this year that the Trump administration wants to limit Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, commonly called food stamps, for able-bodied adults who don't have minor children and don't have disabilities. The time for this to go into effect is near. On December 4, the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced the SNAP final rule takes effect on April 1, 2020. Do you think it really starts on April 1st, 2020? It's probably just an April Fool's joke. Across the nation, 700,000 people would lose food stamp benefits having been in the program for 3 consecutive months. On Guam, roughly 2,000 households could be affected, according to previously released GovGuam data. After having received food stamp benefits for 3 months in a 3-year period, SNAP assistance will be over unless people who want to stay in the program are working or participating in work training for at least 20 hours per week, according to USDA. Previously, the government of Guam has been able to seek a waiver on the work requirement, so many people could keep their food stamp benefits. Now, I detect some bias in here, and I'm going to point it out as I go. First of all was the headline, using the H word, whoa, people are going to go hungry because of Trump. And then here's the second one. After having received food stamp benefits for 3 months in a 3-year period, SNAP assistance will be over unless people who want to stay in the program are working or participating in work training for at least 20 hours per week. Previously, the government of Guam has been able to seek a waiver on the work requirement, so many people could keep their food stamp benefits, missing words, and not have to work. Right? That sentence is not complete unless you say keep their food stamp benefits and not have to work. But by leaving the words and not have to work, you know, they put a little tilt or a little twist on the editorial. The USDA's final rule requires employment for able-bodied adults between the ages of 18 and 49 without dependents if they want to stay on food stamps. The rule change exempts children and their parents, those over 50 years old, including, okay, now here's a good sentence. The rule change exempts children and their parents, those over 50 years old, including the elderly. Now, do you think there's anyone that we could classify as being a member of the elderly who isn't 50 years? Have you ever seen someone who's 49 years old that you would say, oh, yes, he's elderly? No. That's a strange sentence. The rule change exempts children and their parents over 50 years old, including the elderly, those with a disability, or pregnant women, USDA stated. At the direction of President Donald Trump, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue announced the final rule. Perdue said the change is aimed to move more able-bodied recipients of the program towards self-sufficiency and into employment. Is that fair? What if they don't want to work? The rule restores the system to what Congress intended: assistance through difficult times, not a way of life, Perdue said in a USDA President release. Back to the editorial. It's good to promote personal responsibility and break the cycle of welfare dependency for the adults who are able to work but choose not to do so because of a mindset that welfare benefits rather than employment are a better way to live. I couldn't agree more. At the same time, GovGuam policymakers and elected officials in general need to prepare for a scenario in which many more Guam households might go hungry. The Guam Department of Labor has started some job training programs, but these aren't in perpetuity, and there is no guarantee program participants will find gainful employment at the end of their job training. So this gets us back to personal responsibility. Is it the government's job to take people when they're 18 years old and make sure that they get food stamps or a job? Or would that be the responsibility of that 18, 19, 20-year-old, whatever? Next sentence. Many households on Guam could end up hungry and without jobs because of this change in welfare rules. That's something we as a community must prepare to handle. And I've talked about this before. You know, charity used to be really important in the United States. The Community Chest, Salvation Army, the United Way, the Red Cross, etc. But the way things are now, I think an awful lot of people say, I'm not going to give to charity anymore. The government does that. Let the government do it. I pay too damn much in taxes anyhow. Let the government feed these hungry people. That's what food stamps are for, etc. So they've kind of really tipped the whole scale in a very unhealthy direction. So if we decided that the ability to eat should depend on one's at least willingness to work, how do we get from where we are to where we want to be? And there are some who would say, well, we can't ever let anybody go hungry. That would be just too disastrous. And there are others who would say, let's see if we can't start up our own soup kitchen, sort of like the one the Catholic Church now runs to help people through these tough times. But let's really put some emphasis on this idea that if you're under 50 and you're able-bodied and you don't have kids, you want food stamps, you better get out and find a job. Now, here's another complication, and I talk about this all the time. Okay, well, we're coming up here on the last break of the first half here, so I'll come back to this right after the break.
Water. It covers nearly 3/4 of our Earth. From vast oceans to millions of rivers and streams, we're all concerned with protecting our world's water. But none is more important than the water you and your family drink and use throughout your home. A Connecticut water treatment system can improve your water so that your family is using the best water in the world. Connecticut, for refreshing ideas on water.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So I was going to jump back into Tall Tales here, but I'm looking at my Stack VIP, and I see I have a phone call from someone named Joe. Now, this is not you, real Joe Cruz.
No, sir.
This must be another Joe.
Very possible, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Hey, Bob. So the question is the balance of I don't know, responsibility. Right now, you've got I guess in France, they're protesting their pensions, their employment, and I think it ties into the economy. You know, the big employers stimulate economic growth in certain economies where, you know, we don't want a communistic system because we've seen that fail with the Soviet Union. But the question gets to be, what sort of balance? And we have a mixed market. I think we have a mixed market economy. You have private sector, public sector, and you have the public-private partnerships. But I don't know where you stand on this, like Bob. We don't hear too much about organized labor movements here in Guam. You know, where people are well, aside from Guam, like federal jobs. I don't know. There's some word of mouth, rumors. You know, like maybe we could have stopped the SRF from closing down back in the 90s, the downsizing, and all the other civil service jobs that were shut down or downsized under the first Bush Senior. So really, it's where do you stand on organized labor, people in the community supporting each other's employment? Where do you stand on the balance on that?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to just step away from the mic for a second and grab something, and I'll answer your question, another Joe. So if you're watching on Facebook, you'll see that I'm holding a green book up in front of the camera here, and the book says 2-year agreement between the Board of Education and the Guam Federation of Teachers, Local 1581 AFT. And if one were to go to, let me find it here quick. If one were to go to the signature page of that document, you'd find Guam Federation of Teachers Negotiating Team. And the first name on that list it's a list of names. The first name on the list is Robert Klitzkie, chief spokesman. Yeah.
Are you still a member of the GFT?
Well, I'm not, because I'm no longer employed by the government of Guam. Yeah, so I was, back in my younger days, back in the 60s, I was the chief rabble-rouser for the Guam Federation of Teachers.
Someone told me that as long as you keep paying your dues, even if you're retired, you can still be a member of the union, or some union.
Well, I suppose you could, but I don't know what the point would be, why you would want to. But anyhow, so this is my take on organized labor now. Back in those days, we had a labor union on the island called Local 3 of the Operating Engineers out of Honolulu. At that time, Local 3 was the largest local anywhere in the United States, and they tried really hard to set up shop here on Guam. They were never successful. They built a building out in Manilo. They finally wound up giving it to the GFT. They never got it off the ground. And something very interesting happened during the time that Operating Engineers was here. They hired a gentleman named William D.L. Flores, better known as Bill Maher, to be their business agent. And Bill Maher was also a member of the Guam legislature, and he introduced a bill that became Public Law 9-240, which is what we call PEMRA now, the Public Employment Management Relations Act. So that was what gave public employees the ability to negotiate contracts like the one I just showed you. And the suspicion at the time was that Bill Maher thought that he would be able to organize the stevedores at the commercial port if he had that bill in place. It never happened. Private sector unions never really got very far. We have the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, but I think they're primarily concerned with on-base companies. But unions never went very far in our private sector here, even before we had a right-to-work law. Now we've got a right-to-work law that outlaws what are called union shops. So I think the possibility that organized labor is going to have much of an impact on the economy here, on the civilian economy, somewhere between slim and none. Another Joe.
Well, I'm just bringing it up because it would seem as though there's a younger up and coming generation of leaders that could benefit from each other's knowledge or to gain more knowledge rather from whatever source, especially from tall tales.
Where else?
Yes, exactly. I mean, seriously, compared to almost no other sources, and then have confidence, just be an average person and get closer to that possibly more part-time legislature that you're talking about, because they're busy doing the other good work for our economy, so to speak. But anyway, thanks for your time there, Uncle Bob, and we'll listen to the other issues.
Okay, well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Another Joe. And, Will Rogers once upon a time said, I refer to strangers as friends I haven't met yet, and I never met a man I didn't like. So I'm going to take him one better, and I'm going to say, I never met a Joe I didn't like. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we're going to break for the big halftime show, and then I'm going to try to restart Zemi Ikotny one more time.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Horror on the highway in South Florida. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Police is still on the scene after a chase and deadly shootout with two robbery suspects who kidnapped a UPS driver, hijacked the truck, and took off for a 30-mile high-speed chase near Miami.
The chaos unleashed in the middle of Miramar Parkway began about an hour earlier at a jewelry store in Coral Gables. Two armed robbers, police say, escaped in a U-Haul, then carjacked a UPS truck, kidnapping the driver. The UPS van sped north.
The driver's pulling down. The driver's pulling down to his passenger side.
There are shots being fired. We can hear the shots being fired.
Officers, some opening fire, running toward the truck, then taking cover behind other cars in the middle of the crowded road.
Nicole Insalata with Fox affiliate WSVN 7 Miami. The shootout ended north of Miami in Miramar with 4 dead. That includes the UPS driver, a driver of a nearby car, and the 2 suspects. In Minnesota, 3 National Guard soldiers die when their helicopter crashes just after takeoff. Governor Tim Walz.
A Minnesota Army National Guard UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter went down approximately 16 miles southwest of St. Cloud.
The Black Hawk lost contact with the tower while conducting a maintenance test flight. Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the president leaves her no choice but to instruct the House to draft articles of impeachment.
His wrongdoing strikes at the very heart of our Constitution.
President Trump tweeting, if the Democrats are going to impeach him, do it now, do it fast. He believes that he will win an impeachment trial in the Republican-controlled Senate, and Democrats may vote, the House may vote on an impeachment by Christmas. America's listening to Fox News.
Did you know that home loan rates have plunged again? Would you like to take advantage of these lower rates to help lower your monthly payments? Refinancing doesn't have to be for another 30 years. It can be for 10, 15, or 20 years. It's up to you. Reduce your monthly payments. Pay off your loan earlier. At Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Credit conditions apply.
I'm a working mom and could really use more hours in my day. Thankfully, my non-electric Kinetico water treatment system has simplified my life. It's easier to clean my home with Kinetico conditioned water. No more scrubbing tubs or wiping water spots. Cleaners work better and last longer. And all the Kinetico drinking water we want is right here. No more lugging home bottled water. All this, and I'm saving money too, thanks to Kinetico.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
The Pentagon's reportedly considering sending 7,000 more troops to the Middle East to counter Iran's rising aggression.
I haven't seen those specific numbers, and I'm not aware of a deployment. I don't think the president's aware of a deployment beyond the 4,000 troops that were talked about a couple of weeks ago after the Aramco attack. But look, we have a large military, and we're prepared to defend our friends and allies. And if the troops are needed to deter Iran, we have the capacity to move them into the region, although I don't think that's happening right now.
And National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien tells Fox News that President Trump would be open, however, to the idea of more troops. Tennessee executes a blind prisoner convicted of killing his estranged girlfriend by setting her on fire. 53-year-old Lee Hall, put to death Thursday, chose electrocution over lethal injection, and he is only the second inmate without sight to be executed in the country since the U.S. reinstated capital punishment in 1976. And about face by Homeland Security on facial recognition. Officials now say they have no plans to force U.S. citizens to submit to scanning technology when they leave or enter the country. A controversial photo found in West Virginia's Corrections Department prompts some high-level reaction.
Shock and anger is reverberating through state government after a photo of correction officer trainees giving what appears to be the Nazi salute is revealed. Public Safety Secretary Jeff Sandy.
I saw the photograph, and it just was so with disgust.
Sandy is ordering all copies of the picture destroyed or taken out of circulation. Republican Governor Jim Justice issued a statement condemning the photo and ordering the firing of the people involved. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
At a high school north of New York City, council says school play about Tarzan. The Westchester County School reacting to criticism of undertones of racism and imperialism. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Half a day. This is Melanie Mendiola.
And this is Ricky Hernandez. We're with the Guam Economic Development Authority.
And we're both alumni of the University of Guam. We're calling on our fellow alumni to make an investment in Guam's future by contributing to the G is for Giving campaign. With your donation, you are giving more students the opportunity to graduate, making Guam a better place.
To make a tax-deductible donation, log on to give.uog.edu before December 31st or call 735-2957 for more information.
Viva UOG!
In life, we all have the ability to make a difference, to make an impact on someone's life. As we look around us, time never stops, but we are filled with endless moments of gratitude. The art of giving is incorporated in so many different ways. At Guam Gift Baskets, we want to be able to express your gratitude and love to those who you care about. Show your appreciation with a gift made with love this holiday season. Visit our website at guamgiftbaskets.com. See the smiles, touch their hearts, feel the experience.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
The big halftime show at Tall Tales every afternoon at 1700. The marching band, the cheerleaders, the drill teams, the synchronized card section in the grandstand, and the finale, that barrage of cannon fire at the end. It's really something to get your heart beating fast. I love every minute of it. So I'm just wrapping up. Zemi Cotney here. We pretty well disposed of the Daily News editorial. I always reserve a block of time to deal with the Daily News editorial. Today I gave them a little bit longer time. It was 35 seconds instead of the usual 30. And then we went to the Post, and the Post is leaning kind of to the left on this one. You know, the way it was headlined, change in food stamp rule could mean many households will go hungry. And the reaction that you're looking for there, you know, a lot of folks, a total approach to the news is just the headlines. They make their judgments based on the headlines. So with a headline like that, change in food stamp rule could mean many households will go hungry. Oh, no. How awful. We don't want households to go hungry. We've got to do something. Of course, that isn't exactly what the story is about. And then at the end, it says, it is good to promote personal responsibility and break the cycle of welfare dependency for adults who are able to work but choose not to do so because of a mindset that welfare benefits rather than employment are a better way to live. That would have been a really good place to stop the editorial. Say the end, or in the newspaper notation, -30. That means the end of the story. At the same time, but they go on to say, at the same time, government of Guam policymakers and elected officials in general need to prepare for a scenario in which many Guam households might go hungry. The Guam Department of Labor has started some job training programs, but these aren't in perpetuity. And there's no guarantee program participants will find gainful employment at the end of their job training. So this is a responsibility for Guam policymakers and elected officials, according to the Post. And then finally, many households could end up hungry and without jobs because of this change in the welfare rules. And it could say many households on Guam could end up hungry and without jobs because of the unwillingness of its residents to go to work. Yeah, you know, I know. The other day, I guess it was last week, I had Real Joe holler, or actually I had the Real Joe Cruz give me the opportunity to holler, "Bah, humbug!" And I suppose I'm taking a rather Scrooge-like approach to this new welfare rule. But if that's the case, the only thing I can say is somebody's got to do it. And now I got Kellis on the line. Good afternoon, Kellis.
Good afternoon, Bob. Well, from what I understand, this is not a new rule. This is something that was originally written in, but everyone had taken, put their rose-colored glasses on to read over it. But they could either work, they could go to school, or they can volunteer, in for the government. So the mayor's office, weed eating for the mayor, etc. We're always saying how much the mayors need additional work done. You're always talking about the dead dogs or trash on the roads. 20 hours a week, and they get 800 or whatever it is they're getting for food.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like such a burden, does it, Kellis?
No. I mean, for me, it's because I know that there are people out there right now that are a little bit younger than me, so in their 50s, that this is it's been their whole life.
And
there are people out there that have not really worked a day in their life, and they've just lived off the government food stamps and whatnot.
And we read about 2 and 3 generations surviving in that particular mode.
I mean, so if it's free, why work for it?
Exactly. Yeah. Good point,
Kellis. I
Kellis.
think what will happen soon is when they realize that by working they could make more money, and then it'll be better for them.
Well, let's hope.
I'm getting another call right now, Bob. I got to hang up on you. I'm sorry.
Thanks for calling, Kellis. And hello, caller. Hello. Are you there? Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah. Who have I got on the line? Real Joe Cruz is not in the booth, so I had to answer the phone myself.
Well, anyway, I just got this is Jimmy. Got 4 points. I can make it 2 points if you wish.
Okay.
Depending on the time constraints.
All right.
Okay. When I was in school, my next door neighbor was from Taiwan, and at that time, the unemployment rate in the mainland was like 10-15%.
Uh-huh.
And the unemployment rate in Taiwan was 2%. And I said, Chinja, why is it so low? And Chinja said, no welfare.
Uh-huh.
And second point, GUAM.
Okay.
Give us American money.
Okay, Jimmy.
And third point, your bumper music.
Yeah.
Anytime this is just a suggestion.
Yeah.
But anytime you broadcast anything about Gov Guam, perhaps you could play the Peer Gynt Suite, the Hall of the Mountain King.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to do that, Jimmy. And, when I was at another station, I could pick my bumper music and my special effects music. So, for instance, when a guy named Fernando Esteves who was a senator at the time, whenever he called, we'd play Fernando by ABBA. But the way we're set up here, with Facebook Live, if we use any copyrighted music on the air, Facebook Live dumps us.
Edvard Grieg.
I know all about it, Jimmy.
The Hall of the Mountain King.
Jimmy, I've even been to Edvard Grieg's house in Denmark, so I know all about it. But as I'm explaining to you, I'm not able to play anything that might be copyrighted because Facebook Live will dump us.
Oh.
Okay?
Anyway, last point.
Yeah.
What do you say to the point?
What do I say to the point?
What could someone say to the point?
I give up. Your questions are too hard for me.
You got a point. Put a hat on it and go home.
Very good, Jimmy. Thank you very much. Okay, so I've got our Carl on the line, and no?
It's another Carl, sir.
It's not the Carl, is it?
No.
It's another Carl.
Yes, sir.
Today's a day for anothers.
Yes, sir.
And for those of you who called a little earlier but gave up because the Real Joe Cruz didn't answer the phone, Real Joe Cruz, the Real Joe Cruz is back in the control room now, so if you call again, he'll answer this time. So in the meantime, I'm going to chat with our Carl. Good afternoon, our Carl. I'm sorry, not our Carl, a Carl.
Mr. Klitzkie, thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the air with you and just to tell you how much I appreciate your conservative viewpoints.
Well, thank you.
And I understand your deep military history here on the island, in Guam and in the public service.
Thank you.
And I wonder, what troubles me a little bit is your concern or your why is it that you don't feel that people that aren't making enough money don't deserve public assistance for food stamps? Because if I can finish this, just one more comment.
All right.
These people that are so desperate, that are getting these, and I know it's a generational thing in some situations, but in others, it's keeping them from robbing other people. And so where's the balance? We know that the government just came out and said 3 months they're going to cut people off.
Well, okay, let me make sure is that it, Carl?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me see if I completely understand your question. You said, why is it that I think that people who are not making enough money shouldn't be entitled to food stamp? Is that your question?
Yes, sir. Those are employed people.
All right. Now, did I say that, or is that just something that you're deriving from my general conservative attitude?
I think that you've indicated that you don't feel that people deserve food stamps.
Well, I'm doing Jimmy and Cotney here, and I read an editorial, and that was the basis for my comments today. And the editorial talks in terms of applying a rule that's been part of the program for a long time that says if you're on food stamps for more than 3 months in 3 years, you must work for 20 hours a week or you must undergo training. So that's not the same thing as saying people who don't make enough money should not be entitled to food stamps. What it's saying is that people who are able to work or get some training can't get food stamps after 3 months. Not the same thing.
That's a great point, and I think that what you just said helped clarify maybe some misunderstanding people have about the current food stamp policies. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for calling, Carl. Glad to have you on there. We've had a couple of other Carls. We've had our Carl, and we've even had the Carl before the election. So Carls have always turned out to be pretty good callers, so I hope you can call again, okay?
I appreciate your time, sir. God bless.
Okay, Carl. So that was not our Carl. That was another Carl. And then we've got Francis here on line 1, as you were on 3. And then after that, is this another Joe? Is it the same Joe?
Yeah, he rode the Ferris wheel already once.
Oh, he's ridden the Ferris wheel once, so Francis gets to jump on the Ferris wheel first, and then another Joe, you can have a re-ride. Okay, Francis, good afternoon. Hi, Francis. Hello, Francis. Earth to Francis. Earth to Francis. Come in, Francis. No, Francis? Oh, wait a minute. I pushed the wrong button. Hello, Francis. Francis hung up? Okay, well, let me try another. Call back, Francis, please. Let me try another Joe here. Hello, another Joe.
Hey there, goodbye. Maybe Francis got shy there for at the moment, you know?
Maybe.
You're very intimidating. You're very tall.
Yeah, especially on the radio, right? I'm very tall on the radio.
I can tell you're very tall.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk about. I called in to emphasize that the previous caller, exactly the point that you clarified 20 hours of work and in addition training, because that just improves their opportunity to gain new skill sets and to be more employable. And it's exactly what I was hoping organized labor could have a hand in, which is to get more people to participate and have more access to training, in theory, because they'd be employed and they'd be organized, you know?
Uh-huh.
Therefore, it'd be in each other's interest as an organization to get them training. So that's pretty much, I want to reinforce, hopefully it's reinforcing your points, in addition to at least 20 hours work and training, organized labor, encouraging people to be part of a group that would help them to stay employed and trained. That seems reasonable, right, Bob?
Well, it's certainly part of the labor union philosophy, and I would say this, you know, scraping all the paint and varnish off of it and oversimplifying, I see a place in an industrial society for collective bargaining. I don't see a place for a national labor relations board that has the power that our National Labor Relations Board has, mucking up the market system, and that's basically what they do. So that's my quick and dirty answer to labor unions. Another Joe?
Okay, well, one last point before I let the other callers have a chance here. I wanted to challenge our governor, Lulian Guerrero, to find new sources of revenue in industry. And I think possibly one of them, or even economic stimulus, possibly in forestry, I don't know if you would call it that, going around, you look all around our island, about all these dead coconut trees that are missing the tops. I mean, if it still has palm leaves on it, maybe it has a chance of producing some coconuts, but if it don't have no top to it, it ain't gonna produce no coconuts. It's just standing there like a ruin, like a petrified forest or something, except it's falling apart, and it's, I think the rhino beetle larvae might be still inside those dead coconut trees. Is that right?
I don't know. I thought the rhino beetles are primarily inhabiting the fronds, but this is one thing I'm going to have to tell you I'm not an expert on. I think there are only about a half dozen things in the whole world I'm not an expert on, but the rhino beetle happens to be one of them.
Well, if you're right, then it's not so much of an issue. It's not as time sensitive. But if they do eat the entire tree, then possibly take it down faster. But if they don't eat the entire tree, maybe we can have a workforce going around and carefully and safely removing all of these coconut trees that are already dead. They're just standing all around the different villages in the island, and possibly get together with these organizations that plant trees nationwide. I'm not sure was it I forget the name of it. But they go around the nation, they plant trees. Maybe they can go around and in places where we're losing our forest areas and the coconut trees, maybe they can be replanting coconuts, trees that can grow in their place, and get. I don't know how you feel about federal funding for it, but definitely, have some element of our government go around and, if not do it all by themselves, then encourage the private sector to do this. What are your thoughts on that, Kawab, about the dying coconut trees all around us?
Well, those topless coconut trees are indeed an eyesore, and it would certainly be nice to get rid of them. I don't know if the trunks of those dead trees has any economic value or not, but that would certainly be something to find out. Another Joe, but I'd like to see somebody get rid of them.
Maybe Lubion Guerrero, our governor, can look into that and find out. And usually it requires the younger generations who have the bodily strength still. So it could, in other words, create jobs for a lot of the younger generation who are looking for work. But anyway, I just thought I'd have my 2 cents worth there. Kababa, thanks. I'll listen again.
You got 4 cents worth today, another Joe. You rode the Ferris wheel twice. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed the ride. So I'm just about to wrap up. Jemmy Yakotny, I got another call here today. Hey, Francis, call back. Thank you for calling back, Francis. I'm sorry I hung up on you accidentally the first time around.
Not really. Just something wrong with my phone. We're digging ground here.
Okay.
Welcome back home.
It's always good to get home, Francis, no matter where I go. Tadza como que Guam, like Gatson.
Again, Dinansi. Speaking of, I think one gentleman was talking about the public health services here. You know, Uncle, there's a lot of our people too are receiving food stamps, but then they were classified as something like an economically at a disadvantage. Some of it is not permanent, but then again, there are people from all over the world that come to Guam because of the services that's available here. So when you say able-bodied individuals, I think that was that a law that's being passed by the president, or is that a local thing?
It's a regulation, a federal regulation that applies to the SNAP program that has always been in place, but we've been able to get waivers for it here. Right. But now it's going to apply here beginning next April.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think so.
Get a lot of people employed and not rely too much on public assistance. But then again, there are special cases that are probably considered, like you said earlier, single parents, with kids and stuff like that need assistance.
Right.
But there's a great number of individuals here on the island that are not even in their 50s yet and able-bodied and still reliant. But then again, it sounds good. I hope it works out, and maybe the training might encourage, to seek employment or engage in some kind of commerce to help themselves.
Right on, Francis.
All right. Hey, thanks for taking my call, and have a wonderful weekend.
You too, Francis. Good talking to you. Okay, so I'm going to finally wind up here with Jemmy Yakotny, and needless to say, the Daily News isn't even close to being in the running this time. And notwithstanding my criticism of the Post being a little bit more lefty than usual, it's a pretty good editorial. So the coveted Blue Star today, Guam Daily Post. That makes the score Guam Daily Post 156, Daily News 55, Candid News 2. Yeah, so they're going to have a happy weekend over at the Guam Daily Post today because they got the Blue Star on Friday. Okay, so we put aside our folder for Zemi Kutney and go to the card. First thing on the card, well, let's see what have I got on the card. I've got a seventh inning stretch coming up, and I'll come back to the card right after the seventh inning stretch.
The holiday season is here, and it gives us pause to reflect on the abundance of 2019 and to express our gratitude for Guam, the island we call home, and to all Guamanians. Our team here at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Ever notice how that one perfect holiday gift is just out of reach? Or how sales on the stuff you want all come at the same time? This season, plan ahead with a holiday loan from First Hawaiian Bank. Now you can afford to be nice without being naughty. For more details, visit FHB.com or any branch to apply. Additional restrictions apply. First Hawaiian Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla. Try their featured special for December. Kahlua pork and cabbage. Slow roasted smoked lace pork. Shredded and sauteed with onions and cabbage. Served with steamed rice and lomi lomi salmon. Try it today. Available in Agana and in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Hard hit ball, center field. It's a home run over the ivy covered wall, center field, Wrigley Field, Chicago. And the folks out there now are enjoying their seventh inning stretch, just as you are in the comfort of your own home here at the beginning of the top of the seventh here on Tall Tales. That means I've got two more innings of Tall Tales to go today. So this is what I've got on the card. I've got first item on the card, Bill 236 versus Michael San Nicolas, and a subtitle, Potomac Fever. Yeah, you've heard of dengue fever, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Malaria fever?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Potomac fever?
I don't think so.
Potomac fever can be very, very serious.
I've heard of the Potomac River.
Yeah, well, Potomac fever can be as serious for those who succumb to it as dengue fever. Then I've got Lulian Guerrero versus the Attorney General. And the subtitle here is, Let's Take a Gamble. Then I've got Bavacqua versus Fools. DOE and some holdovers from yesterday's calendar. DOE versus Sports, the United States versus China, the Left versus the Salvation Army, and Antonio Gramsci versus y'all. So let's start out with Bill 236 versus Michael San Nicolas. Bill 236 contains a provision for filling a vacancy in the office of our Washington delegate to Congress. Now, you know that we elect, pursuant to the Organic Act, we elect a delegate to go to the United States Congress every 2 years. And we've been doing that since 1974. Starting in 1966, we sent a delegate to Washington who had no official portfolio. He was just a local official who was elected for 4 years and kind of went to Washington to serve as our delegate. Then in 1974, the Organic Act was amended to give us a non-delegate to the United States Congress who has the office, the perks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, does not have a vote on the floor. And so far, up until now, we've never concerned ourselves with what would happen if that office were vacant, even though a couple of the office holders were what you might call superannuated. I'm referring to Ben Blas and Antonio Wanpad, each of whom, as I recall, were at least in their 70s, were in the office. They're in the office. Well, now we've got somebody in his 30s. And all of a sudden, Tina Rose and Pito and Joe San Augustine are concerned with what would happen if that office were vacant. We need to create a special election procedure. Well, I'm not really fooled by this. What I see is this is just one way to campaign against Michael San Nicolas, even though it's not election season, because people will hear about this, filling this vacancy, and the first thing that will pop in a lot of people's minds is, is the office vacant? I thought that was Michael San Nicolas. No, Michael San Nicolas is still there. Oh, no. Is he sick? No, Michael's pretty healthy. Well, he's not old, so why are we worrying about a vacancy? Well, there's an ethical complaint against him, and, just to be on the safe side, in case he's removed, we need a way to fill that vacancy. Oh, he might be removed? So you could see that you can very innocently turn any conversation around into a anti-Michael San Nicolas rap just by saying, yeah, these three senators, Joe S.A. and Tina and Pito, want a way to fill that vacancy in case we have a vacancy. So I see one of the purposes of Bill 236 is to weaken Michael San Nicolas. Now, why would anyone want to weaken Michael San Nicolas? Let's assume that he's not going to be removed from office, and let's assume that he's going to run for re-election. When would a good time be to start weakening Michael San Nicolas's chances for re-election? Answer, Real Joe Cruz, do you know the answer?
I do not, sir.
The answer is right now.
Right now.
Yeah, start out right now, so that by the time we get up to next November, we are dealing with someone who has had to fight off those who would be his opponents, even though the election race hasn't started. So that's why I put this on, why I sub-labeled this Potomac fever. Now, Robert Underwood has told us about Potomac fever. He's written about it. And it's a pretty well-known term for those who follow Washington politics. Potomac fever means it's something that people are stricken with who go to Washington on business, and they become so imbued with the ambiance of the nation's capital, the action, the bigwigs, the important folks, their own importance, the excitement of it all, that they really want to stay on the banks of the Potomac. And as the real Joe Cruz pointed out before, the Potomac River flows, it's one of the borders of the District of Columbia. So Potomac fever refers to people who really want to go to Washington. So who has Potomac fever here on the island? Well, I had to dig back in the back of my closet and find my crystal ball again. And when I gazed into my crystal ball, this is what I found, some names that I found in there. First name is Will Castro, who would like to be a delegate to the United States Congress. Now, of course, that requires a little clarification because given some of Will's later endeavors, do you think he wants to represent Guam or the CNMI in Congress? Or does he care? And then we also have Regine Biscoe-Lee, who recently hired someone who has been a radio talk show host. So if they have been a radio talk show host, you start out with the presumption that they really know what the heck they're talking about, right? So Regine Biscoe-Lee hired Philip Leon Guerrero, a former talk show host, at $70,000 a year. Now, could this be part of Regine Biscoe-Lee's plans on running for the delegate seat herself next year? And then, of course, we have Tony Babauta, the governor's chief of staff, who perhaps has had Potomac fever. He's been an assistant secretary of the Interior until he was pretty generally disgraced, but he's actually operated in that environment, perhaps has a serious case of Potomac fever himself. And then there were folks who were saying the reason he was taking so many junkets to D.C. was because he was looking for a job in D.C. And then, of course, he ran against Madeline Berdallo in the election before last, which surprised a lot of folks because Madeline Berdallo had always been one who had kind of helped him out. But anyhow, Tony Babauta is also potential. And then I'm not going to mention the other one until the 14th of December. So there's someone who may very well announce on the 15th of December. And I'm not going to say I'm not going to keep their name under wraps. I'm going to break the rule and say I'm going to keep her name under wraps. I suppose I'm going to get a lot in a lot of trouble with the gender warriors there by referring to someone as she, because that means that in my mind she is a female, and in her own mind perhaps she is not a female, perhaps she's a male or something else. So
that's gender labeling, Bob.
It is, I know. I know. If I come outside the studio and I got 4 flat tires, I'll know why, right? Yeah, so that's my crystal ball. And, yeah, well, maybe I'll break that other name before the 14th of December. But, well, you got to tune in on Monday. Monday's the 9th, so maybe I'll release it on the 9th. But you got to tune in to find out. Okay, then the next on the agenda here is Lou Leon Guerrero versus the Attorney General. Now, why would Lou Leon Guerrero be fighting with the Attorney General? We kind of thought they were on the same side. The Attorney General is the chief legal officer for the government of Guam. And let me see here. I got, Toms, Carls, Joes. We got them all today. I got a call here from our Carl. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, Bob. Figured I'd surprise you and call in. I haven't called in a while.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think you called in the other day, and I was going to get you on after the home stretch, and I forgot. And the program ended before I got to you. But anyhow, here we are.
Well, that's partly my fault. It was really tight up against the top of the hour. You know, you're about to close the show off, and I figured, it's too late. But, you know, whether I call in or not, you know, I'm usually listening, at least on and off, as I'm driving around getting things done. So I was listening this afternoon, and you really caught my interest with your comments about that reform that is coming up to the, the welfare that makes it necessary for people that are able-bodied and are not handicapped in any way, don't have children, to find work. And, I'm very interested in this because I grew up on Guam, in very deep poverty. My family didn't have a car until I was 18. And, we lived in some pretty beat-up houses over the years until I was 15. But anyway, I really believe that this kind of thing, we're all concerned about the crime that is happening these days. But really, I believe the root of that problem is the breakdown of the family. And I'll give 2 big examples for that in American history. One of them is Black Americans from going back as far as slave days and through through the 40s, majority of Black American families were 2-parent family. I believe in the 40s it was the 20s to 40s. I think it was over 70% were two-parent. From the 40s to the 60s, excuse me. And then about the mid-60s, somewhere in there, Johnson started his Great Society initiative. You know, they started the expansion of the welfare state. And these positive metrics, you know, as far as murder rates, crime rates, two-parent family, you know, started to reverse in the 60s to the point now today where black families in America are over 70% single parent, most of them women. And the state did this, the government did this by incentivizing the breakdown of the family. They made it they incentivized women to have as many children as possible because then you increase public assistance. You can maximize public assistance, even if it's with different fathers. And then they also incentivize fathers to leave their families because families are given more money when they're fatherless families. So this and other policies led to the breakdown of the black family. And the black family had survived slavery. It had survived Jim Crow. It had survived the KKK. Extremely resilient people. But in the wake of the expansion of the welfare state, so-called, I think it was called the Great Society or something, it began to break down. And what happens is without a positive role model, a father or grandfather or some positive, especially a male role model that these young boys can look up to and will hold them in line, all these fatherless families, where did these males turn to for a family? They turned to the gangs. Who became their role models? The thugs, the head gangsters in these gangs, the drug dealers. So the government is trying to, they say they want to, I like this about government, you know, how they ride up on this, in the knight's outfit, you know, the white knight, the shining white knight. We're going to rescue the American people from this terrible stuff. And so many times it happens like this. They actually planted the seeds for the mess that they're claiming they want to rescue us from. The second example I'd like to give is the American Indians. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe as a group, this ethnic group receives more per capita public assistance from the government than any other group in America. And yet, it has a very high suicide rate, tremendously high alcoholism rate, tremendously high crime rate, and gangs and things like that. So public assistance has been a disaster for the black American families and others, Hispanics as well, but especially notable among black Americans, and also catastrophic to the American Indians. So if we're concerned about crime, we need to reform exactly what this policy reforms, which is getting able-bodied people back to work. And you know, your and my, one of our favorite writers and thinkers is the economist and social philosopher Thomas Sowell. And he's, written numerous books. He's looked at cultures all over the world. He came to the conclusion that the linchpin of success for individuals, regardless of the amount of income in the family, is the family itself, having a strong family unit. And another important aspect is accumulation of human capital. In other words, that stuff between our ears that enables us to create value for employers and customers that they're willing to pay for. And I think the education system has just completely lost track of this. Kids are being socially promoted. they're graduating, but a lot of them are they're functionally illiterate. They can barely write. They have trouble reading. They have trouble thinking critically. You know, they just enter the marketplace crippled. So anyway, these are just some of the thoughts I wanted to toss out there because this is very important to me. I think this is where the reform needs to start. If we're concerned about crime, just throwing more money at it isn't going to help. It's the breakdown of the family is what is the fruit of what we're seeing today.
As a matter of fact, Carl, throwing more money at it is what exacerbated the problem. And along the same lines, you can never underestimate the power of free stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, there's the unintentional consequences. You know, I think Thomas Sowell calls it stage one thinking. You know, they say, well, we'll throw money at it, and these people are going to, you know, they're going to have food and they're going to survive. But they don't think beyond that. Well, what happens in stage two, you know, as the family begins to break down, and stage three, and stage four? And we're at those stages now. And all they thought about in starting these policies is stage one.
Well, of course, you know, my usual criticism of the Democrats and the leftists that the idea behind any program does not depend, you know, the success of the program is not part of the calculation. It's starting the program so they can say, well, we did something. You know, there was poverty in the United States and we did something. We put a lot of people on welfare and food stamps and things like that. Anyhow, Carl, I appreciate your remarks, and I think you and I are pretty close together on just about everything you said.
Okay, Bob. Well, I'll call back another time. More to say, but it's running out of time. So I thank you for allowing me to toss in a few thoughts.
You got it, Carl. So long.
All right, bye-bye.
Attention federal employees and annuitants. Open season is running now through December 9 for FEHB plans. Voted PICA's best again for 2019, Take Care delivers comprehensive insurance coverage and quality health care when and where it's needed most. Take Care's popular supplemental wellness package provides cash incentives and gives members a choice of 19 fitness partners, including Paradise Fitness Center. To learn more, visit TakeCareAsia.com. Take Care, the first reaccredited health plan in the region.
Want to grow your business? Start a new venture? Or stay ahead of the competition? You can. With Docomo Pacific Smart Business Solutions tailored to your specific needs and ambitions, you can do it all. Partner with a network with best-in-class network coverage, state-of-the-art communication platforms, and a team dedicated to providing you with premium support. Call 688-2677 to start your journey to success today. Docomo Pacific Business, delivering your future today.
Call to the post, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, the home stretch. We're heading for that final curve, heading for the finish line here, which means I've got about, 6 more minutes here to wrap up another exciting, educational, informative, entertaining episode of Tall Tales that you've all come to know and love so much. I got some bad news for you for tomorrow and Sunday. There'll be no Tall Tales tomorrow, no Tall Tales on Sunday. I know it's going to be a struggle, and I know that by about noon on Monday, a lot of you guys are going to be out there, going to be jonesing for Tall Tales. Well, if it's tough on you, think about me and the real Joe Cruz, how hard it is for us to get through a whole weekend without doing Tall Tales. But we somehow struggle through it, don't we, real Joe Cruz?
We do, sir.
Yeah, we do it. And I've got some good news. Although Monday is a Government of Guam holiday, and it's also a holy day of obligation for Catholics, there will be a Tall Tales on Monday afternoon. So I don't want to compete with a processional. So if you're going to go to the procession pick up Tall Tales after the procession on Facebook or YouTube. But if you're just sitting at home in that lazy boy chair over there, like the Smart Money does, tune in to Tall Tales, 4 o'clock Monday afternoon. The Real Joe Cruz and I will be here dispensing the usual huge doses of wisdom, as is our usual custom. Now, I got just 5 more minutes here, and I think I can start on Lou Leon Guerrero versus the Attorney General. I won't be able to get to Bavacqua versus Fools, but you can look forward to these on Monday. So Lou Leon Guerrero how could Lou Leon Guerrero be fighting with the Attorney General? I thought they were on the same side. The Attorney General is the chief legal officer for the territory of Guam. Lou is the governor of Guam, and here's how it goes. This is a story that ran in the Post, parties in a long-standing case on gambling machine licenses met Thursday afternoon to argue how the Superior Court of Guam should decide the case. The Office of the Attorney General is asking the court to invalidate regulations on gambling devices, declare licenses issued under those regulations void, order the Department of Revenue and Taxation to revoke any licenses issued, and prevent the Department of Rev Tax from issuing any new licenses. That's what the Attorney General is asking for. The government of Guam, on the other hand, is defending those machines and asking that they be allowed to stay in place. Now, how does Governor Lou Leon Guerrero get involved in this? Well, the Attorney General is being represented by an Assistant Attorney General whose name is almost as difficult to pronounce as Klitzkie. Her name is Marianne Wolaschuk. She is the barrister handling this matter for the Attorney General. So who's representing the Department of Revenue and Taxation? Shouldn't it be someone from the Attorney General's office? No, you can't represent, the same firm can't represent both sides in a lawsuit. So there were a couple of other cases where the lawyer for the Department of Rev Tax moved to challenge the Attorney General's participation, saying, "You can't sue us. You're supposed to defend us. That's a conflict of interest." The court ruled, no, it's not a conflict of interest. The next ploy was, well, if we got to hire our own lawyer, Attorney General, you got to pay for it. Court said, no. You have the ability to hire your own lawyer. It's in the books. It's a statute. Or you could go out and hire somebody else. So the case comes forward. So the Attorney General is trying to invalidate those licenses by suing the department, actually the Director of Rev Tax. So who represents the Department of Revenue and Taxation? Answer, Sophia Diaz. Who is Sophia Diaz? Do you know who's Ko Ontungo si Sophia Diaz, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. Sophia Diaz is one of the 2 lawyers in the governor's office. Counsel to the governor, Haig Huynh and Sophia Diaz are the governor's legal advisors. So Sophia Diaz, the governor's legal advisor, is representing the Department of Revenue and Taxation, who is fighting the Attorney General's efforts to declare those machines illegal, the licenses void, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what conclusion can we draw from all of that? Governor Lou Leon Guerrero is pro-gambling, in case you wondered. Okay, we'll come back to this on Monday. Have a nice weekend. The real Joe Groves and I are going to stumble through it with no tall tales. We'll make it. We'll be back on Monday. See you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
2 robbery suspects in a UP